Hi, my name is Matthew Bohm with NCC Video Waves. I'm here with my lovely guest, Donna Acerra.
Hello, Matt.
Hello, and today we're going to be talking about a little bit about the history of radio.
Great.
So, my first question is, what got you into the radio?
Well, I think we have to go way back to when I was a little kid. I lived in a home where the radio was always on. My mom had a radio in the kitchen that seemed to be on from the minute I woke up to the minute I came home from school. And in the basement, my father had a Radio Shack because he was a ham radio operator. So when I would get into my mother's hair, or pick on my siblings, she would send me down into my dad's Radio Shack to just have him entertain me. And I was fascinated down there because not only were there all these noises like the sound of Morse code and just the radio tuning noises, but there were maps of the world, and my dad was talking to people from all over the world using his finger on a little telegraph key.
Whoa, that's insane. So with your fascination, did that turn into a collection of sorts or anything like that?
Yeah, I started collecting. I don't know that I knew I was collecting, but I loved the old radios that were in my home that belonged to my grandparents and then my parents, and they would get a new radio and then I'd have their old model, and I started collecting and keeping all of those. And by the time I moved out, I had a sizable collection, and then people just started giving me radios because they knew I had radios. And before you know it, I have over 100 radios in my home, and I really wanted others to see them because they are so beautiful.
So with your want for others, did that turn into some type of exhibit somewhere or anything like that?
Yes, I was really lucky to be invited to co-curate an exhibit on 100 years of radio in 2019, and it was to celebrate the formation of RCA, the Radio Corporation of America, in 1919. So it was 100 years later, and we put together 100 radios, and we told the story of radio through this exhibit. And it was open to the public for about 11 months, and people just love to come in. I think everybody has a radio story. They have a memory of radio from when they were growing up. And, radios are kind of personal in a way, so it was, I thought, really appealing to the public.
And out of your entire collection, which radio is your personal favorite?
Oh boy, that's tough. They're like children. You really can't pick one. But if the rest of the radios weren't listening and I had to single one out, it would probably be the Motorola. It's sort of a maroon Motorola from the 40s. And I just love the Art Deco design of the grill and the Bakelite. And, it just all comes together, and it's a beautiful specimen.
And out of every decade of radio for the last 10, which one would you say has the best designs for the radio?
Which decade?
Yeah.
Oh boy, that's a good question, Matt. I would probably go to it would have to be between the 30s and the 40s, so maybe from 35 to 45. After the war, radios became smaller, television came into the home, and the transistor had been invented during the war, and so then pretty much you just had little black plastic boxes. But pre-war radios were so beautiful. They were wood, and they, like this blonde Zenith right here from the 40s, they were works of art in a way.
And as for the people that didn't get a chance to see the beautiful exhibit, why don't you give a verbal walkthrough of what you'd see as you walk in the doors?
Okay, that's another good question. So first of all, before you'd enter the exhibit, you'd have to be introduced to some of the founding fathers of radio. So you'd get to know a little bit about Heinrich Hertz and Nikola Tesla, and of course Marconi, Lee DeForest, Edwin Howard Armstrong, and David Sarnoff, who became the president of RCA and really got the ball rolling in terms of consumer radio. And then once you got into the exhibit, you would see we made a mock ham radio shack, because radio really did start. The whole idea of radio broadcasting started in the ham shacks of these early Morse code radio operators. So you'd go through a ham radio shack and see all the equipment and see how it evolved. And then you would move into kind of radio through the century. So starting out with the crystal sets, of the 1910s and 19-teens, and then moving into radio in the home, the big radios, the floor model radios, and then as radio started to get smaller so that it could fit on counters and like kitchen counters and that kind of thing, radios got smaller. And then, as I said, post-war, the radio gets even tinier, and it really loses all of its beauty, I would say, with just the plastic radios of the later decades. But then in the exhibit, we had a very cool space where you could sit in an old living room from the 1950s and listen to a beautiful Blaupunkt radio that I have, which has great tone. And we had shows from that era programmed, so you would just select what you wanted to listen to, and you could pretend that you were in the 1950s, sitting in a 1950s living room and being entertained by the medium of the day.
So you could just get the entire world at your fingertips through turning some knobs back in the day?
That was it. And that's why people love their radios. They hung on to their radios. That's why there's so many radios still around. People didn't junk their radios. They went into the basement and then there's a resurgence. There's a huge amount of radio collectors in the world today.
It's definitely a beautiful industry, definitely a beautiful medium in general, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, thank you, Donna, for telling us about the fascinating world of radio.
It was my pleasure.
I'm Matthew Bohm for NCC Video Waves, signing off.